1895. In the novel The Time Machine, H.G. Wells popularizes the concept of a tool that allows us to move between different points in time. And that's certainly an important landmark in the history of mankind's ideas about time travel and cannot be overstated. But the very ideas of time travel, as esoteric philosophies of time, go much deeper into the past. They touch on the very question of what time is and its nature. So in this video, we will take a brief look at some mythological stories about time travel. Hindu mythology tells the story of King Raivat Kakudmi, who travels to heaven to meet the supreme creator of the universe, who is Brahma. Upon returning to earth, the king is surprised to find that it has changed considerably. In the devoted text of the Bhagavata Purana, we read that here in heaven, 1 year is equal to 360 years on earth. Because much time has passed, there are no more signs of your kingdom and your family, because they have been destroyed by the passage of time. Hindu sages explain that time is relative. In other parts of creation, time flows differently than on earth. When Niam, one of the queens of the distant land of youth, first saw Oisin, the chief of the warlike Fen tribe, she decided to take him as her lover. After 3 years of an idyllic life in the land of youth, Oisin gets overcome by homesickness and longs to return to his native Ireland. Niam tries to convince him not to do this, but Oisin is unwavering, so lastly Niam has to permit him the return to Ireland. She confides in him a magical horse that can walk on water to take him to Ireland and warns Oisin never to touch the ground itself. When Oisin returns home, he realizes with horror that his homeland has become quite different. Centuries must have passed. He then falls off his horse, grows old in an instant, and dies of old age. This story is traced back to Japan in the tale of the fisherman Urashima Taro, who is rewarded for rescuing a turtle. He takes the turtle to the dragon's palace, which is under the sea, where he is entertained for an unknown number of days by a princess. He then remembers his father and mother, which makes him want to return home. The princess tries to convince him to stay, but in the end lets him go. Before he leaves, the princess entrusts him with a box lined with jewels and reminds him not to open it at all. When Urashima returns to the mainland, he realizes that 300 years have passed. Shocked by the realization, he opens the box and turns into an old man. This is a story that is strikingly similar to the previous one. A 1st century thinker, Honi the circle maker, is said in the Talmud to have fallen asleep for 70 years one day. When he returned home, he learned that his son was dead, but his grandson was still alive. He told the other Israeli disciples that he was the famous Honi, but no one believed him, and he died sad and alone. A Christian story tells how the Roman Emperor Decius persecuted Christians around the year 250. Among the accused was also a group of 7 young men who were given the opportunity to renounce their faith. Instead, they gave up all of their possessions and went to pray to a mountain cave, where they ultimately fell asleep. When the emperor saw this, he had the cave sealed. When the 7 young men were awakened a few centuries later during the reign of Emperor Theodosius II, by a landowner who just wanted to use the cave to shelter his cows, one of the men went to town for food. He watched in amazement as churches grew in the city overnight, openly showing the sign of the cross. Shortly afterwards, the men were questioned by the local bishop, and they told him about the miracles that had happened and then died praising God. A rather similar story is found in the Quran, namely the story of a young man who criticizes the pagan rituals of his king. He gathers with like-minded people and they protest in the square, and then they have to flee the town. They hide until they go to rest in a cave where Allah gives them 300 years of sleep. When the story of their return gets told, a new king comes for their blessing. The story which we encountered here again and again in different clothing found many manifestations in the works of early science fiction. Early works thus speak of people sleeping for centuries and waking up to a rather different and technologically advanced society, or arriving there with the help of supernatural forces. A particularly striking story was written by H.G. Wells, who introduced us to the idea of a time machine, a tool designed to transport us to different points in time. Time travel, of course, is something that can go into two directions, forward or backwards. We have talked here only about going to the future. A journey back in time, however, is the thing that we all know for generating mind-boggling paradoxes and which became the stamp of science fiction. And what exactly is the first work that played around with this concept is not known. As an early work of time travel that runs in both directions, we could cite Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol of 1843, where the three spirits of the past, present and future of the stubborn protagonist Scrooge lead him through his past, his present and his future. Since Christmas is around the corner, I do recommend this book. If you haven't read it yet, it is strikingly pleasant to read, and I've just read it at this time last year.
Near a black hole, time's gonna change for me. It's gonna run more slowly. When we get back, we're gonna compare.
Under the influence of more modern theories of the universe, however, we once again encounter a familiar story. The Nolan brothers most prominently played around with this story in the film Interstellar, where a brief operation near a black hole ensures that the protagonist's crew ages 20 years when they return to their ship. Thus, the ancient story came to life again on the screen and enchanted viewers, many of whom did not realize that they were watching an ancient story about the passage of time.
But I knew you'd come back.
How?
Because my dad promised me.